Let's talk about the waiver wire for week number 11. There's definitely an opportunity to improve your fantasy team. There are also players that you should stay away from and some injuries you should be aware of. So let's quickly discuss some of the injuries from week number 10. Jackson Dart with the concussion. I wouldn't expect him out there. You need to look at another option if you're currently playing him. Garrett Wilson with the knee. It's the same injury he had where he missed multiple games. I wouldn't anticipate him to be out there. Devontae Adams probably should be fine from all indications so far. Chris Rodriguez with the shoulder. At the time of recording this, we don't know the severity of it, but if it is serious, JCM is a fine desperation play. RB2-3 flex versus Miami next week. Bam Knight with the ankle injury. Terrell Jennings with the knee. Dalton Kincaid with that hamstring. He's probably going to miss some time. And then the last name, which brings me so much pain, Aronde Gadsden. I was relying on him in the Flock League to give me a big game last night. Obviously, the knee injury. At the time of recording this, I don't know how severe it is. I would be surprised if it's serious because it didn't look that serious on the replay, but with my luck, who knows, right? But we definitely need to monitor that. The thing is, it's not going to impact the waiver wire, whether it's serious or not, honestly. Okay, if you can add the following players before Monday Night Football, then go ahead and do that. The Chiefs defense, the Cowboys defense, they should be free pickups because they're on the bye. Names like Tajay Spears, DK, Luke Musgrave as a stash, Tank Bigsby as a stash. These are stash-worthy names. Before I get into my favorite players to pick up this week, I want to go to a segment that we've been doing called Honey Traps. These are names that look attractive, but you're probably going to be hurt if you spend big money on them. For example, Davis Mills in a Superflex league or one quarterback. Do not chase last week's game. Dylan Sampson, yes, it was awesome to see him have a role this week, but still 25 touches for Quinshon Judkins. Sampson with just 3. He's a handcuff at best in a terrible offense. Jalen Naylor, look, we're not going to chase what we saw this last week from Jalen Naylor. He put up 124 yards, a touchdown, over 23 fantasy points. The rest of the entire season, not a single game over 10 PPR points. He has to compete with Jefferson and Addison. Do not pick him up. It's a waste of your time. How about Tyler Lockett? Look, Tyler Lockett is interesting if you can get him completely free. Outside of that, I don't really want to spend too much money on him. He's an aging player. They have a lot of young players that they should get involved there in Las Vegas. Kyle Williams. I actually love Kyle Williams. I love him so much. But 2 targets, one of them goes for 72 yards and a touchdown. That is not replicable from one week to the next. And of course, we know that Kayshon Boutte is a starter for this team when he's healthy. And then how about Colby Parkinson? Do not chase that game over 14 points this week. He hasn't had a single game over 10 the entire season, and they rotate tight ends there in Los Angeles. All right, my number 1 pickup this week is the same exact number 1 pickup I had last week. That is Alec Pierce. Now, if for whatever reason you didn't pick him up last week and he's still available somehow, please go pick him up. We're talking about a guy in Alec Pierce who's a part of a great offense, has had in the past 4 weeks games of 14.8, 8.9, 17.5, 18.4. He's been integral to this offense. And in Berlin, he led the team in snaps, routes run, and targets. Michael Pittman had just an 8% target share. He was the dominant wide receiver with 7. Turned those 7 targets into 84 yards and a touchdown. He's been great. He's been fantastic. He actually leads the league in yards per reception, and you saw him kind of replicate that again in Berlin this week. If you look at this chart, which Plaz has put together here, it shows EPA per target and targeted air yards per game. You'll see Alec Pierce at the top right there with the elite names in the game today, like JSN, Puka Nacua. That is exactly where you want to be. The breakout is truly here for Alec Pierce. I'm willing to spend about 20 to 40% of my fab on him if for whatever reason he's out there available in your leagues. It's time to take him seriously if you didn't take him last week seriously when we told you to. All right, my second pickup, a name that we've talked about a lot this week. And by the way, there will be deeper names if you're in larger leagues, so just be patient with me. But Tez Johnson, if for whatever reason he's out there and available, he needs to be rostered at this point. Here on Sunday, he had 5 targets, but caught 2 of them for a touchdown, ended up with 20.2 PPR points, 4 catches, 42 yards, and a touchdown. He keeps making big, explosive plays in replacement of Chris Godwin, who we don't know how long it's going to take for him to get back. Reports are not good on him. But in 4 games as a starter for the Bucs, 83% route participation, 16% target share, which is not crazy, but he is a big play threat. 70 air yards per game, over 14 points per game in PPR. He's been fantastic. he can be a reliable flex for you until Godwin is back. All right, let's go to another tier of players. So I don't value these guys the same, but Tajay Spears. Look, Tajay Spears has been completely fine since coming back from his own injury. He's been very effective, very efficient, been used on the ground, in the air, 3 or more targets in every single game this year that he's played since week 6. Only week 5, which he played 25% of the snaps, he didn't reach that number. He's been far more effective, efficient, explosive, dynamic, has more juice than Tony Pollard. After the bye week, we could see a potential change of the guard for the Titans and the way they deploy these running backs. Okay, next we will talk about Parker Washington. Now, Parker Washington, if you guys remember, in week 9, had 9 targets, caught 8 of them for 90 yards. Now, we are 3 games in a row where Parker Washington has been fantasy relevant. In week 7, 10 targets. In week 9, 9 targets, 7 targets this latest week. Had the touchdown, had also the return touchdown on special teams, ended up with 17 points in back-to-back weeks. Now, obviously, at some point, you are going to see Jakobi Meyers more and more involved in this offense. In this game, they didn't give him a full allotment of work. He had 27 snaps out of 62 possible, only ran 16 routes. So he's going to get more and more involved. He will be the receiver to own. And then, of course, at some point, you will get Brian Thomas back. But that's a high ankle sprain for Brian Thomas. So as long as he's not going to be good to go this week, I think Parker Washington is a startable name. Let's move on to Tyler Algier. Now, Tyler Algier has been getting a lot of opportunities on the goal line, and that is frustrating Bijan Robinson owners. Here versus Indianapolis, which is a very good defense, he averaged over 5 yards per carry, had 2 touchdowns, over 17.5 fantasy points. Obviously, that's frustrating for anybody out there who owns Bijan Robinson. If this is probably going to annoy you a little bit more. On the year, Tyler Algier, 6 touchdowns. Bijan, 4. I definitely understand why that's frustrating. I don't think you can actually start Tyler Algier, to be clear. I do think he's more of a handcuff right now, but he's a premier handcuff. He would get all the work if Bijan went down. Okay, at number 5B, tied with Algier here, we'll talk about Darius Slayton. Now, if I knew Slayton's hamstring injury was not going to be serious, I might have him ranked ahead of Algier. He's just been a reliable name since he's come back for Jackson Dart. In the past 2 games, he's had 4 more targets, 4 more catches, and 60 or more yards, over 11 fantasy points in back-to-back weeks. And he has become a really important part of this passing attack. You know, before he was healthy, it was really just Wan'Dale Robinson. Now you'll see Darius Slayton out there, 45 snaps, 26 routes run, but again, didn't play all of the snaps because of the injury. He's been very crucial to this team. I would expect him to continue to be moving forward if he's healthy. At 5C, this is really about, like, do you need to start next week? Because at some point, Trey Benson will be back. But if he's not back next week, Amari DiMercado and Michael Carter both should have roles. Obviously, you prefer Amari DiMercado. He averaged over 16 yards per carry in this most recent game, was used in the air, on the ground. But the reason I'm even talking about this is because Zonovan Knight, Bam Knight, left the game with an ankle injury and he did not return. So there will be someone relevant in this backfield against San Francisco. It's a pretty good matchup against the Niners on the ground. They are a very good matchup for your running back. So I'm willing to spend about 7 to 15% of my fab on those names if you need them. All right, we're going to dive a little bit deeper here in the video, but just quickly, I want to let you guys know that there's a free feature on the Flock Fantasy website called the My Teams feature. That gives you the ability to see expert consensus opinion on your fantasy league, including rankings, recent trades, etc. You can get that completely free when you use the promo code LAND at sign up and create a free account. You can check that out with the pinned comment below. Okay, look, do you need a tight end? Well, here are some of the names that I believe you should consider, starting with Theo Johnson. Now, Theo Johnson's a young player out of Penn State, second-year guy who has had some really nice games, some big flashes where he's gotten into the end zone. This last game, he had 7 catches, 75 yards. And if we're going to see Darius Slayton miss time, he could be a legit flexible name. How about Dalton Schultz, who, whether it's CJ Stroud or whether it is Davis Mills, he seems to be the safety blanket in this offense. 11 targets this week, 7 catches, 53 yards, and a touchdown, over 18 fantasy points. His best day of the year. He's probably not going to do that every week, but he's such a safe floor. How about Juwan Johnson, who seems to continue to be in favor with this offense? Only had 4 targets, but caught all of them for 92 yards and a touchdown. Tyler Shuck looks pretty decent. He's an important weapon to that offense. Dawson Knox is a desperation play. if you're out there and you're going to miss Dalton Kincaid, you can pick him up completely free. Have low expectations though. All right, and now we will go to the other guys. These are deeper league pickups. And look, I'm not going to rank them in any particular order, but I'm just going to tell you why I think they would have value. For example, Sean Tucker we'll start off with here. Well, are you a Bucky Irving owner? Do you think Rachaad White has a lot of value? Are you concerned about how long Bucky Irving might be out? Well, Sean Tucker might be just as valuable as Rachaad White at this point. In fact, he averaged over 5.8 yards per carry. He was far more efficient on the ground than Rachaad White was. In the same exact game, Rachaad White had 3.8 yards per carry. Rachaad White was used more in the air, but still, Sean Tucker showed he had a ton of value. In fact, the Patriots have faced names like Bijan Robinson this year. They have faced names like Quinshon Judkins, Genty, Cook, Dowdle, Achane. Sean Tucker is the first running back to have 50 rushing yards against that rushing defense. So he has shown how valuable and how effective he can be. So instead of trading for Rachaad White, just pick up Sean Tucker for free at this point. Okay, Devin Singletary. Look, if you're in desperate need at the running back position, Singletary is just as valuable as a Tyrone Tracy at this point, right? He had 11 touches last week, as well as 10 the week before. So 10 or more touches in back-to-back games. And that's pretty valuable in a Giants offense that, continues to show that they're going to be better than they were last year with Jackson Dart. You can see, obviously, Tyrone Tracy led the way. There's no doubt about it. 16 total touches, but still, Devin Singletary has a role, so he has some value. We can quickly talk about Blake Corum, who in games where the Rams are up, he's going to get more and more opportunities. And that's what you saw against the 49ers here this week. You saw Blake Corum with 13 rushing attempts compared to 14 for Kyren Williams. And Blake Corum turned those 13 rushing attempts into 56 yards. He always looks pretty good, pretty explosive, pretty dynamic. And you can see Kyren Williams' snap percentage. There is a trend that is starting to go a little bit down after the bye. This team said that they want to utilize both running backs, and they're starting to really do that in this offense. So I think it's something that we should monitor. Brian Robinson, look, at this point, he is strictly a handcuff. If you own Christian McCaffrey, you need to have Brian Robinson handcuffed at this point. Back-to-back weeks with a touchdown, back-to-back weeks over 5 yards per carry. He's a good player, but ultimately he doesn't have value unless CMC goes down with the injury. We can also talk about Christian Watson, who you might be able to pick up before tonight's game. He is the wide receiver 2 with this offense that has so many injuries. Jerry Jeudy's coming off the bye. 12 targets, caught 6 of them for 78 yards and a touchdown. He gets Baltimore next week. The Raiders after that could be a worse schedule for sure. Jaden Higgins is more of a stash than anything. He was great this week with Davis Mills. The week before that with CJ Stroud, completely uninvolved. I just don't know exactly what they want with Jaden Higgins at this point. And Luther Burden, if there is going to be time missed for DJ Moore, he will have some value. Maybe they'll finally feature him in this offense. I'm going to talk to you guys about some defensive streaming options for this week, but I got 10th place in the Quick 6 Super Slam DFS contest last week. I was so close. Unfortunately, if I just put Achane as my 2-time bonus or Gibbs, I probably end up winning it. But I'm going to go back to the well, create my own lineup this week. You can create yours. It's a very simple game. All you have to do is choose 6 players that are not quarterbacks and then set your bonuses per player. You can download the FastDraft app, use my code LAND at signup. I'll match that deposit up to $50, and then you'll get my weekly rankings completely free. So check that out in the pinned comment if you want to have some fun with some FastDraft. Okay, last thing for today's video is defensive streamers. All of the names that I'm going to talk about have top 10 matchups this week as far as defensive points allowed, schedule adjusted. The Texans are facing the Titans. Awesome. The Bears versus the Vikings with JJ McCarthy. The Ravens versus the Browns. The Falcons versus the Panthers. The Patriots versus the Jets. Cowboys versus Raiders. And Packers at Giants. That's my preference in order. But any of them are great options if you go out there and pick them up this week. Guys, I appreciate you watching the video. Do me a favor, hit the like button to show some love. Subscribe if you like the content. And I'll see you in the next one. Love. Draft with me every night this week on the FastDraft app, where there are thousands of dollars to be won weekly. Getting started is easy. Download the FastDraft app, use the promo code LAND at signup to get your deposit match up to $50. That's up to 10 free entries on us. And when you finish your first DFS contest, I'll send you my weekly rankings completely free. Check out the link in the pinned comment to start drafting today.